Hello viewers! In today's video we will be talking about the operating fluid specifications and recommendations for Mercedes-Benz passenger cars from the 80s and 90s. Let's start with the one that's changed the most often and is the most important, best known one, engine oil. The engine oil's job is to provide lubrication, hydraulic support, cleaning and cooling to the engine. Oils with less than required specifications won't fulfill these jobs properly, leading to serious damage potentially. The recommendation is an oil which has MB 229.1 or rather 229.3 approval or up to newer, and is of 5W40 or 10W40 viscosity. For the most frequent engines for basically general application, I recommend using 5W40. It will flow easily even in the greatest winters. It will provide decent enough lubrication for general use. If you have a big engine, you use your car under heavy loads or at high RPMs frequently, you better use 10W40. 10W40 has better hydraulic support properties and thus is more suitable for that purpose. If you use 5W40, keep in mind that the lighter the viscosity of your oil, the more likely it is to evaporate, and this oil vapor will cause soot buildup in your exhaust system, in your EGR, and through your EGR in your intake. Using 5W40 means that you will regularly use your car for long stretches of high-speed driving, like a highway drive or just a long road drive. Also, you can just use a few good accelerations to clean out the soot before it builds up too much. Everything within the word of the law. Obviously, I am not endorsing speeding or anything. A misconception I've heard, or rather read, was looking for Mercedes-Benz 229.51 and 52 oils for these 30 to 40-year-old cars. It won't hurt your engine, but it is an unnecessary expense. These oils are for DPF-equipped engines. They are low SAPS oils. They're just more expensive, and we don't have DPF in our cars, so unnecessary. The change period for engine oil is 10,000 kilometers or 6,200 miles at the absolute latest. So you should aim for 8,000 rather than 10,000, but you can just use it up to 10,000 kilometers. If you have a van, a Mercedes van, lower that number. So instead of 10,000 at the latest, it should be 8,000 at the latest. And convert that to miles. If the year turns around faster than you gain 10,000 kilometers on your clock, you should change your oil every year, and always change your oil along with the oil filter or filters if there's more of them. Now on to some recommendations. My prime recommendation for engine oil is Petronas Synthium 3000 AV. Petronas is the official supplier of Mercedes when it comes to engine oils and generally oils. Thus, we will know for sure that anything we put in our engine is tested by Mercedes. This specific oil, Synthium 3000 AV, fulfills Mercedes-Benz 229.3. So it's suitable for 80s and 90s cars, petrol or diesel, anything. If Petronas is not available for you, or you never heard of them and you're skeptical, there's no problem. Alternatively, you can use Shell Helix HX8 or Shell Helix Ultra. Shell used to be the official oil supplier, at least when it came to warranty service. My car used to be serviced for a good 25 or so years in Germany under warranty, and they used Shell 10W40. Shell Helix HX8 and Ultra fulfills Mercedes-Benz 229.3 as well. Let's move on to transmission oil. The task of transmission oil is minimizing friction between gears under extreme temperatures and their fluctuations. In automatics, it also acts as the hydraulic control fluid. Another misconception we have to tear apart is lifetime oil. Lifetime oil is a scam. Lifetime oil doesn't exist. Every fluid we use degrades with time and use, their characteristics change, and they no longer fulfill their purpose properly, thus needing replacement. For manual transmissions, use Mercedes-Benz 235.10 approved, GL4 75W80 or 75W90 transmission oil or gear oil. The change period is at the very least 100,000 kilometers or 62,000 miles. Again, aim lower. This is the max it can take. For automatics, use Mercedes-Benz 236.10 approved ATF. The change period here is at the very latest 60,000 kilometers or 37,000 miles. Again, with the filter. And once again, this is the absolute maximum it can take. Aim for a little lower. Attention! Always confirm Mercedes-Benz approval for your specific transmission code. These two that I just said are in general good for this purpose, but if you feel uncertain, if you feel like maybe it might be a different thing, check your transmission code and write to Mercedes-Benz. They will help you. They will reply and they will give you the specifics what you need. Not the dealer, write to Mercedes on the official site. Also note that unlike with engine oils, newer specs aren't always compatible backwards, especially with ATFs. Now for the recommendations. For manual transmissions, I recommend mainly using Mercedes-Benz's own 235.10 gear oil or Febby's 21829. This is a 75W oil, and it's the kind that's currently in my car's transmission too, and it's working perfectly fine. Or Mondol 8104. This is a 75W80 gear oil. As for ATFs, Mercedes-Benz very own original 236.10, Shell Spyrex S6 ATF, or Revenol ATF M6 series. I know I have botched this German word. Forgive my German. Let's move on to differentials. In rear-wheel drive cars, the differential is a separate component from the transmission. Needs its own oil changes, needs its own maintenance. Its task is basically the same thing as a manual transmissions, but thanks to the fixed gear ratios and the constant load on every single gear, the wear and thus the wear protection required is much higher. The recommendation here is a GL5 Hypoid gear oil ranging from 75W85 to 80W90. The key point here is Hypoid gear oil. This is basically the MB spec here. You want to look for this word, Hypoid. Note that for standard open diffs, which will be most of the cases we are talking about, always use differential oils without LSD additives. LSD additives will cause unnecessary friction in the system. Only use LSD additives if you actually have a limited slip differential. The change period is the same as for a manual transmission. At the absolute latest 100,000 kilometers or 62,000 miles. Aim for a little lower. Recommendations: Petronas Tutela transmission Hypoid 75W90 Axle oil and Total Traxium Axle 9FE. This one doesn't have Hypoid written anywhere on it, at least as far as I've seen. However, it comes recommended on Total's own website, the oil finder they use, so it should be good. Power steering. Hydraulic power steering is a great thing. However, its fluid degrades just as much with time and use as every other fluid circulating in your car. The power steering fluid's task is, for one, lubricating the steering system, and second, making that steering easier using oil pressure generated by the pump. The recommendation for power steering fluid is a Mercedes-Benz 236.3 approved power steering fluid or central hydraulic fluid, not ATF. It's very important not to use ATF for power steering in a Benz, especially if it's newer than 87. The added friction caused by the ATF will cause issues in the systems that have reduced tolerances. Now, it used to be ATF, Dextran 2 ATF used to be the recommended oil for power steering. But that was before Mercedes-Benz specs were a thing. And it's not perfectly clear, at least for me, when these Mercedes-Benz specs came in and when they started to matter. So it's best to just go with 236.3 power steering fluid or central hydraulic fluid. It's really easy to find. The change period here is 50,000 to 60,000 kilometers, or 31 to 37,000 miles, or 3 years, up to 3 years, or if discoloration occurs. Always change along with the filter. The recommendations here are Mercedes-Benz's very own power steering oil, Fuchs Pentazen PSF, or Monol 8980. Currently, my car has just had its power steering fluid changed a few days ago from the original 32-year-old Mercedes power steering fluid to Monol power steering fluid. It's working perfectly, steering is a lot smoother, a lot easier, and quieter. It's worth doing this. Let's move on to brake fluid. Brake fluid and good brakes are the basis of safe traveling. The task of brake fluid is remaining a fluid, an uncompressible fluid, despite the high pressures in the braking system. Easy enough. However, brake fluid, with time, absorbs moisture, water. This water will turn into compressible steam during a more intense braking, especially an emergency braking, dramatically reducing braking performance. The recommendation here is a bit problematic, to be honest. So, officially, the recommendation is a .4 plus brake fluid with MB 331.0 approval. Issue is, I couldn't find any. I looked all over the internet for this specific kind of brake fluid, and I couldn't find it. I found .4 plus, but not MB331 approved. So, not knowing what to do, I asked the dealership, and they said, let's just use .4. So that's what we went with. And for the record, .4 works perfectly with the ABS. I have good ABS reaction, I have good braking, I have no brake fade. It's working well. The recommendation, despite all this, is .4 plus and Mercedes-Benz 331.0 approved. If you can find this kind of oil, good for you. Use it. The change period, similarly to the power steering fluid, is 50 to 60,000 kilometers or 31 to 37,000 freedom units, up to 3 years, or when discoloration occurs. You don't have a filter here, so you don't have to replace any filters. Attention, and this is important for those who want to work on their brakes at home. Brake fluid is extremely aggressive. Never let it touch painted surfaces or sensitive plastics. It will damage them. The recommendations. So again, We don't have everything here, at least. You can, of course, use Mercedes-Benz's own brake fluid. This will have every recommendation and every requirement fulfilled. The other .4 plus you can use is Febby's 26748, and you can use good quality .4 in these oils stead. So I have Brembo 04010 here. Coolant. The coolant's task is moving unwanted heat away from the engine and inhibiting internal corrosion. This is especially important with engines that have aluminum or alloy cylinder heads. Basically, the kind of engines that Mercedes started to switch to in the 80s. Why is this important? Because if you have two different metals very close to each other, and maybe you have them connected via direct contact, a different metal again, or water, they will start to react to each other, starting corrosion. You want this corrosion inhibited. Badly chosen coolant can cause insufficient cooling, coolant gelling, internal corrosion, and seal and rubber part damages. You really don't want to pick a bad kind of coolant. So the appropriate spec here is a Mercedes-Benz 325.0 approved coolant. Period. This coolant will be a bluish green, or blue or green, and it will be silica or hybrid technology coolant. You don't have to pay attention to specifically silica or hybrid technology because Mercedes-Benz 325.0 already has that covered. All you have to do is look for this spec. The change period is a bit more forgiving here, 50 to 80,000 kilometers or 31 to 50,000 miles, 2 to 3 years, or if discoloration or performance damage occurs. The recommended fluids. So Febby 22268. Perfectly fine. This is what I'm using because this is all I could find that fulfilled 325.0. Or if you have access to something else like Castrol Radical NF or Alpine C48, those work perfectly fine too. Fuel. This will be a good one. So let's talk about fuel compositions. You will see on your screen now numbers and letters, E5, E10, and B7. The E numbers are notations for gasoline and B7 is diesel. These stickers must be found on every available fuel at your fuel station, either on the nozzle, the respective nozzles, or the respective little billboards above them. The E number gives you the bioethanol content of gasoline, while the B7, for example B7, but the B number shows the biodiesel content for diesel. These are all percentages. So E5 is up to 5% bioethanol, E10 is up to 10% bioethanol, and B7 is up to 7% biodiesel. Now that we have this out of the way, let's talk about compatibility. This will be a problem for some, or everyone, we'll see. Premier or regular might be an eternal dilemma. Today, however, it's very important to know what fuel your gasoline engine can take, not because of the performance or the fuel economy, but specifically because of the contents and composition that we have just talked about. In 2008, a German man wrote to Mercedes, and Mercedes replied to this letter about gasoline compatibility. They said that all gasoline engines produced after 1986 can take E10 gasoline. You will find the link in the description of this. Except for the early CGI engines of W203 and C209 models, engines not originally fitted with three-way catalysts from the factory, and engines with carburetors. So the ones I have just mentioned are not suitable for E10. despite being past 1986. This list matches with the gasoline compatibility list released by ACEA in 2018. Again, the link will be in the description. In the case of diesel engines, the situation is a lot simpler since premium and regular, at least in Hungary in 2025, are all uniformly B7 fuels, so it's only the additives that change. Filters. Most fluid circulating systems in your car include at least one filter, but there are some that have 3. There's no point in cheaping out on them. Their properties can negatively impact the system's abilities, cause unwanted wear, or cause performance issues. Do not cheap out on your filters. I recommend using Mahle, Mannfilter, or Bosch parts. Not only are they good and tested quality, they also include most seals and washers necessary for maintenance. An example from my personal experience, I've been using Mannfilter for the beginning of my Mercedes times, and Mannfilter included 2 copper washers and the big O-ring for the oil filter housing with the filter. And as far as I know, Bosch does the same. However, Mahle not only included all of the above, but also included the 2 small O-rings which are needed for the stem. So if you want to get the good stuff, buy Mahle. For a final note, I will repeat, choosing the right fluids for your car are essential for prolonging the service life and making sure that everything works as intended for the time of its life. At operatingfluids.mercedes-benz.com, you can find products listed for every Mercedes-Benz approval. Should any products I recommended be unavailable, consult the lists to find a solution. Safe travels, and thanks for watching.